Welcome to Let's Talk Criterion, where we preview forthcoming releases on Blu-ray and on 4K in the Criterion collection here in the UK and the US. Now, this month we have a plethora of new releases to look forward to. I also hope you'll enjoy us even more, as we are now coming to you in 4K UHD. To view this, just choose the 2160p option on your YouTube settings on either your app or your browser. And I can also promise you more live streams to come, and our image quality is set to improve in that area also. British director Nicolas Roeg, who died in 2018, aged 90, had a knack for filming nightmarish dread in broad daylight. Now, anyone who watched The Witches from 1990 as a child or an adult will remember, of course, not a shadowy cauldron, but a harshly lit hotel conference room in which Angelica Houston peels off her face to reveal her hideous witch self. Roeg started as a cinematographer with credits including Fahrenheit 451 and Far From the Madding Crowd, and began directing films in the 70s, including the David Bowie vehicle The Man Who Fell to Earth. In 1973, he came out with the psychological thriller Don't Look Now. Now, this is based on the Daphne du Maurier book. It tells the story of a married couple, John, played by Donald Sutherland, and Laura, the surpassingly gorgeous Julie Christie, whose little girl drowns in a lake. Now, the action then moves to Venice, where John has been hired to restore an old church. They meet a clairvoyant blind woman, the supremely creepy Hilary Mason, who claims to bear messages from their daughter, which she delivers shrieking warnings of imminent danger for. John also appears to have psychic abilities, which both compel and deter him. Now, Don't Look Now focuses on the psychology of grief and the effect the death of a child can have on a relationship. The film is renowned for its innovative editing style, recurring motifs and themes, and of course, the controversial sex scene that was explicitly, by the standards of contemporary mainstream cinema, somewhat dicey. It also employs flashbacks and flash forwards, in keeping with the depiction of precognition. But some scenes are intercut or merged to alter the viewer's perception of what is really happening. It adopts an impressionistic approach to its imagery, often presaging events with similar objects, patterns, and colours using associative editing techniques. The film doesn't explain because, quite frankly, it doesn't need to. It allows the audience to feel the fear and tension of the couple and lets the obtuse narrative flow speak for itself. Now, Don't Look Now is particularly indebted to Alfred Hitchcock, exhibiting several characteristics of the director's work. The oral match cut, for instance, following Christine's death, from Laura's scream to the shriek of a drill, is reminiscent of a cut in the 39 Steps. When a woman's scream cuts, for instance, to the whistle of a steam train. When John reports Laura's disappearance to the Italian police, he inadvertently becomes a suspect in the murder case himself, and an innocent man being wrongly accused and pursued by the authorities is a very common Hitchcock trait. The film also takes a Hitchcockian approach to its mise-en-scène by manifesting its protagonist's psychology in plot developments. In taking their trip to Venice, for instance, the Baxters have run away from a personal tragedy and are often physically depicted as running to and from things during their stay in Venice. The labyrinthine geography of Venice also causes John to lose his bearings, and he often becomes separated from Laura, and is repeatedly shown to be looking for her, both physically and, of course, with what is going on in his head. Now, Nicolas Roeg had employed the fractured editing style of Don't Look Now on some of his previous films, Performance and Walkabout, but it was originated by the editor Anthony Gibbs on Petulia. Roeg served as the cinematographer on that film, which incidentally also starred Julie Christie, and Gibbs went on to edit Performance and Walkabout for Roeg. Now, the other thing to mention is the colour red. It's elegantly controlled by Nicolas Roeg as the central motif in a mosaic of image. Subliminal flashes of fear or premonitions of death that speckle John's traumatised thoughts. And then we come to the famous sex scene, intercut with shots of the couple dressing afterwards in a very adult, loved-up glow. Now, this wasn't included in du Maurier's original story, although it's important to realise how sexual adventure and Venice are intertwined in the drama's DNA. For du Maurier, Venetian was slang for gay love. Sex scenes in the movies are generally between people who are having sex for the first time, but Laura and John are having married sex. They have had sex many times before, although this is surely the first time since the death of their child, so the sex is a kind of redemptive miracle, a scene that is moving in its frankness and its intimacy. Sutherland and Christie are an overwhelmingly convincing married couple in the film, despite being apart for much of the movie itself. Don't Look Now's sex scene involving Julie Christie and Donald Sutherland caused considerable controversy before the film's release in 1973. British tabloid newspaper The Daily Mail observed at the time that one of the frankest love scenes ever to be filmed is likely to plunge lovely Julie Christie into the biggest censorship row since Last Tango in Paris. They were somewhat sensationalist, to be fair. The scene was unusually graphic for the period. It included a rare depiction of cunnilingus in a mainstream film. Now, Don't Look Now was produced through London-based Casey Productions Company and Rome-based El Dorado Films by the producer Peter Katz and the executive producer Anthony B. Unger. The script, based on the short story by Daphne du Maurier, was offered to Nicolas Roeg by its scriptwriter Alan Scott, who had co-written the screenplay with Chris Bryant. Filming began in England in December 1972, and it broke off for Christmas and resumed again in January 1973 for several more weeks in Italy. Although real-life couple Natalie Wood and Robert Wagner were originally suggested for the parts of Laura and John Baxter, Roeg was eager to cast Julie Christie and Donald Sutherland from the very start. Initially engaged by other projects, both actors unexpectedly became available. Christie liked the script and was keen to work with Roeg. Sutherland also wanted to make the film, but had some reservations about the depiction of clairvoyance in the script. He felt it was handled negatively and believed that Don't Look Now should be more of an educative film, and that the characters should in some way benefit from ESP and not be destroyed by it. But Roeg was resistant to any changes he suggested, and he issued him an ultimatum. Roeg wanted Julie Christie to attend a séance prior to filming. Leslie Flint, who was a direct voice medium based in Notting Hill at the time, invited them to attend a séance session which he was holding for some American parapsychologists who were coming over to observe him. Roeg and Christie went along to the session and sat in a circle in the pitch dark and joined hands. Flint instructed his guests to uncross their legs, which Roeg subsequently incorporated into the final film. And who was the girl in the red coat? Well, that was Adelina Porio, cast after Roeg saw her photo at a casting session in Rome. She only stood at 4 foot 2 inches tall, and she had a career as a singer. Renato Scarpa was cast as Inspector Longhi, despite not being able to speak a single word of English, and he had no idea at all what he was actually saying in the film. Now, the drowning scene and house exteriors were filmed in location in Hertfordshire at the home of actor David Tree, who also plays the headmaster at the Sun's boarding school. In Venice, Roeg used Hotel Gabriele Sandworth. The lobby and exteriors stood in nicely for the film's fictional Europa Hotel, although the Baxter Suite was located at the Bar Grunwald, which was better accommodating for the cameras. And the San Niccolò de Medicoli, that's the Church of St. Nicholas of the Beggars, located on the outskirts of Venice. Finding an appropriate church proved somewhat difficult. After visiting most of the churches in Venice, the Italian location manager suggested constructing one in a warehouse. The discovery of San Niccolò was particularly fortuitous since it was being renovated and the scaffolding was already in place, these circumstances lending themselves well to the plot of the film. And of course, those sequences are absolutely stunning. The haunting score for the film was composed by Pino Donaggio. Now, he was a native Venetian who was a popular singer at the time up to that point. He had never scored a major motion picture, and he needed not to have worried, really. The score was a triumph. Now, at the 27th British Academy Film Awards, Anthony B. Richmond won the award for Best Cinematography, and Don't Look Now received further nominations in the categories of Best Film, Best Direction, Actor, Actress, Soundtrack and Film Editing. This 4K restoration was produced somewhat a while back now in association with Studio Canal for some time in the UK and Europe in 4K edition. Criterion Collection in the US now brings this transfer to 4K UHD with a Blu-ray, of course, and the following special features are ported over from the original release. 4K digital restoration supervised by director of photography Anthony Richmond with uncompressed mono soundtrack. A conversation between the editor Graham Clifford and the film writer and historian Bobby Osteen. Don't Look Now, Looking Back. That's a short documentary from 2002 featuring Clifford, Richmond and director Nicolas Roeg. Don't Look Now, Death in Venice, a 2006 interview with composer Pino Donaggio. Programme on the writing and making of the film featuring interviews with Richmond, actors Julie Christie and Donald Sutherland, and the co-screenwriter Alan Scott. A programme on Roeg's style featuring interviews with contemporary filmmakers Danny Boyle and Steven Soderbergh. Q&A with Roeg from 2003, recorded at London's Ciné Lumière. There's a trailer, and as always, an essay by the film critic David Thompson. Cover art's the same as the original release, and it's by Fred Davis. Now, this release has been out of print for many years in Criterion, and of course collectors will be delighted it's now returned to the collection and are especially grateful to enjoy it in 4K. It's a masterpiece from Nicolas Roeg. Don't Look Now is adapted from the story by Daphne du Maurier. It's a brilliantly disturbing tale of the supernatural, as renowned for its innovative editing and its haunting cinematography, as it is for its naturalistic eroticism and its unforgettable climax and denouement. It's one of the great endings in horror history. The film has a running time of 110 minutes and it comes in a 1:185 aspect ratio to the collection as existing spine 745 and as a 4K Blu-ray combo released Tuesday the 3rd of October. And on that note, I'm going to leave you for this edition. On the next edition of Let's Talk Criterion, we'll be looking at the comeback to 4K in the collection of the fantastic Cronenberg film Videodrome. Until then, from me, above all, good viewing.